Hey, this is Bobby from Bob Vylan on Primordial Radio.
Primordial Radio.
Yeah, the title just came about after some kind of like meditation and stuff that I was doing in a studio space that I was working in. I've been working in a space that I was fortunate enough to get into through a friend or someone that I didn't know, but actually soon became a friend. And it was a beautiful space. It had a beautiful garden in it's a house, there's a garden, and then there's a studio. The studio is called Windy Ridge, and the garden area was just like, it's summertime, sun was out, and there was like cat there, and there's little birds there, and it's just like, feels like a little slice of nature in the city. And, I kind of wanted to create an album that was an evolution for the band. And, when I was in that space, things started to develop in a way that naturally, I suppose, led to like an evolution of the band. And so working in that space and having these conversations with myself and conversations with nature and the sun, and kind of seeing this thing in the sky that is just it's always there, and it doesn't dim its light for anybody, and it's unapologetic, and it's just every day it's there, and I just kind of thought to myself, that's what I want to take on. I don't want to dim my light for anybody. I don't want to be apologetic for my existence because I'm shining too bright, or it's a cloudy day, or whatever it is. Like, I just want to be, and that's really where the album title comes from. Just this refusal to dim one's light for anything and anybody, and like acknowledge the accomplishments that individually I've had, but we as a band have had. And by acknowledging those accomplishments and being vocal about those accomplishments, hopefully people find some sense of empowerment in that, and some sense of self-belief in that, because that's what I find when I listen to this record. That's what I find. The album is made for us first and foremost, and when I'm having a hard day, I'll put certain tracks on and I'll remind myself of where I've been and where I'm going and what I've accomplished, and I hope that other people find the same thing in it. Like, some of these songs existed at similar times as The Price of Life, but they just weren't for the price of life, As this album started to kind of like come together slowly, I realized that that song works on here and this song works, and like you start to develop them, and then you realize like, oh, I've got an album here. It's working. But yeah, it is a cathartic album. It's working through a lot of things. It's as all of the albums are, to be honest. Like We Live Here is an extremely cathartic album. The Price of Life is an extremely cathartic album. But I think the difference with this one is that has a sense of hopefulness and resilience and empowerment that maybe the other ones just don't have in such a volume. So, even with Makes Me Violent, it details my relationship with this country, and it details my feelings towards this country and this country's feelings towards me. But it doesn't, at the end of it, it's, they want me gone, but I'm going to stay and give them hell. So it's still, it still has this sense of empowerment, and it finishes with a sense of empowerment. Like, I'll leave when I decide to leave, but for right now, I'm going to stay. I'm going to give this place hell, and I'm going I'm going to shake it up as much as I possibly can. And then I'll be out, you know? So I think that's kind of the difference with this album, is that like it's ever hopeful and ever empowering, and it focuses on that as well as everything else that we're going through in this country. I suppose like if the shoe fits, then like feel free to put it on, right? Like it's not an attack on any individual. It's an attack on it's not a critique on any individual person. It is a critique on the country and on a mind state, you know, and it's nothing is ever like, here's a song about Steve. Do you know what I mean? It's like, this is like Steve. It's like, it's not that. Even like, you know, even like very rarely do we even mention politicians by name. Do you know what I mean? Like there's no song, there's no lyric in there that is like, oh, Rishi, da-da-da-da-da. Because isn't necessarily the individual. The problem is the ideology, the idea of what Britain is, what this country represents, what this country's history is. It's like this idea that collectively is fed to the people, right? And the people either eat it up or they reject it, or, you know, they kind of acknowledge that it's not a complete account of what this country is, you know? And so for us, we have to offer that. We have to offer our experience. My experience in this country is going to be completely different to yours. You know, why would it not be? We're completely different human beings with completely different cultures and backgrounds and like past even just physical appearance. Our history is completely different. My father's fathers, my ancestors' history with this country is completely different. And so I have to offer that, you know, because that is part of this country's history, and it's then part of this country's present, you know, and it's part of its future. It's never an attack on an individual, really, you know, but I suppose if somebody hears the lyrics and they feel attacked, they feel like, oh, he's talking about me, more of a problem with that individual than it is with anything I'm saying. I don't know, because I've never been in politics, right? So, and I think like you could get into that space with the best of intentions, but I don't think it is built and structured for any change to happen that a few don't want, you know? Like, and so you could get into power and be the most socialist leader this country has ever seen, but will you have the power? Will you actually have the power just because you have the label as Prime Minister? Will you actually have the power to change things for the better, or to change things in the way that you would like to? I don't know. I don't know if it's set up for that. I don't think it's structured for that. I think it's deeper than just like, I'm the Prime Minister, I could change this country. You know, I don't feel like that is a possibility. As far as like making more change outside of it, advocating for policy, again, I think if you're advocating for something, you're fighting for something from the outside, someone inside has to listen to you in order for it to change, right? So I suppose for me, it's not necessarily like, I realize that being on the outside, right, how am I going to change things inside? That's a hard task. So for me, like, it's more about community stuff. It's more about community-based things, right? So, and building that sense of community. And you see that in various different ways, and being, you know, taking part in community events and initiatives. And like, even if it's like a protest, you know, saying we don't want this war, or we want our country to do, like, that is a form of community. There's people, like-minded people coming together and saying, you know, we all agree on this core point, this core thing, that like, we don't want the Iraq war. We think this country should do something about the genocide happening in Palestine. Like, you know, we don't want tuition fees to rise. It's this thing of like people, like-minded people coming together and with a sense of community, speaking up. And, you know, of course, like, doing that, you are dependent on the government to make that change that you're asking for. But at the same time, out of those things, certain community projects and initiatives are birthed, you know, and that's quite a beautiful thing as well. And so which one can make more change? I'm really not too sure. And I suppose I'm not necessarily too concerned with that. I'm more about feeling part of a community as an individual in this world, and trying to grow that as much as possible, you know. The biggest single challenge, I suppose it's not like a single event. It's more a mind state of the people and the industry that we have to operate within and around. So one of the things that we've had to, you know, say overcome, I don't know if you can overcome it in a way, because we face it at every point in our career, but I suppose we can definitely navigate it better. That is the issue of people continuously not believing in us. And that is present even now. There are things where, like, underestimating us. That's essentially what it is. Like, at every point throughout this band's, you know, lifetime, we have had people underestimating us. It happened a couple of weeks ago, where, you know, somebody that we're working with underestimated us, and I tried to tell them, no, this is what we should do. Like, this is what we should do. They're like, nah, we think we're gonna go with this, but it's their company, and we're working, you know, we're working kind of collaboratively, but we're working. It's their company. They're gonna kind of, at the end of the day, do what they wanted to do. It wasn't a big enough deal for me to go, oh, well, then we're not going to do this thing, right? It was like, okay, let's do it, but I think we should do this instead. And turns out I was right, you know. And that happens so often. It's happened at festivals where we're put in a smaller tent, and I'm like, that's not going to be big enough. It's not going to be big enough. And they're like, talking to my agent, and like, why are we there? And he's like, yeah, I know, but, you know, because he believes in us. There are people on our team that, like, they believe in us. They know what we're capable of. But trying to communicate that to other people is so hard. And people just, oh, well, you know, it ain't got the Spotify list. They don't have the Instagram followers. They ain't got the YouTube subscribers, and da-da-da-da. So we think that they should be billed here and they should play this size of stage or tent or whatever. I mean, look and go, this ain't going to be big enough. You go there and think, this is too small. And then you get there, we get on stage, lo and behold, people all around, you know what I mean? They're pouring out, and people, I couldn't see the show, which, you know, is great because, like, oh, wow, so hype, couldn't see the show. But it's like, it's also like, well, but people missed the show that wanted to see the show. That has happened, like, those kind of things, like the underestimating of the band, happened from the very beginning. It happened last week. It's continuous. It is continuous, and I don't know. I'm not sure why it happens. I suppose people look at different metrics and therefore maybe have like a different perception of what the band is capable of or what the band is doing. But yeah, it's incredibly frustrating, and it's something that we have had to find ways to navigate, because you can't force somebody to believe in you. Yeah, last time it was just insane. It was crazy. It's a wild show. So I think the album came out that day, right? It's April 22nd. I think the album came out that day. And I remember, do you know, one thing that I really remember is the hospitality, because that's an important thing, right? It's like, it's not just about the crowd and the size of the stage and all of that stuff. So it's the hospitality. We felt appreciated, and we felt like we were wanted there, and like that is a big deciding factor when we decide to go back to a festival or whatever. It's like it's important for us to feel as though like we're wanted somewhere, and like we're appreciated, and it's not just a thing of like, oh, these guys will sell tickets or whatever. It's just like, yeah. So when we got there, I remember like everyone was so helpful, loading in, and again, like that is something that we have George, our tour manager, and Tech, who kind of like single-handedly does a lot of things, and so for people to just be so on it and helping him and like loading in and loading out, and then someone like I get lost around those, like around festivals and like buildings and stuff like that. Just like get in there and I'm like, oh, where the fuck am I? But someone like, oh, I'll show you where you go to do this and and everyone's just super kind, super helpful. So like that sticks out in my head more than anything else. But then of course the show itself was wild. I can't remember if we cleared it beforehand, the stage invasion, or not, but it was like, it was an absolutely gigantic stage invasion. It was just, I didn't expect that many people to come up, and you see the pictures and it just looks, it's pandemonium. You know what I mean? It's just like, it is absolutely wild, and it was such a fun festival for us to do. It was wild. Like people loved it. I think for a lot of people it was their first time seeing us as well, I think. And so that's always nice to be able to introduce ourselves in such a it was like a playful environment. Do you know what I mean? It was a playful environment. I remember talking about like trying to introduce certain tracks and realizing there's kids there and trying to find ways to explain what they were seeing and what they were hearing. Do you know what I mean? I think I ended up talking about Paw Patrol and how and something to do with the police and relating it to that. It was just a fun show, and then we stood and we met and we took photos, and we talked with everybody afterwards as well that wanted to talk and take photos and stuff, and everybody just seemed like they really enjoyed the show, and they had such a great time, which is all we can ask for, really. So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to coming back. It's like it feels right. Like we came there last time when we had an album out. We're there this time when we got an album out. It just feels right. It's good because it shows the band growing, and it shows that like the hard work that you're doing, that you're putting into it, it's not for nothing, and it's recognized, and it is working, because there's some things where you're in it. Like I'm in it all the time, and so I try to have a realistic view of what the band is and where the band is. And it's nice when other people recognize that and they kind of, I suppose, confirm my beliefs of like, I feel like we could headline that, and then we headline it, you know. So that's nice. Yeah, it's gonna be a fun show, I'm sure. I do not doubt it. I think people that are regulars there, they're gonna be excited to have us back if they saw us, you know, if they saw us a couple years ago. And people that are seeing us for the first time, I hope that they have a similar experience as those that were there in 2022, you know. If I'm happy with my output in this world, and I'm happy with the art that I've created as Bob Vylan, you know, as a band, not as an individual person and operating in this world, but as a band, my idea of success is being happy with the artistic creation that we're putting out, and that is how I feel with this album, you know. I feel extremely happy with how it is, with how it stands. There's nothing I would change about it, you know. I feel incredibly lucky to have been able to create something like this. I feel success in that. It doesn't matter how many people buy it, how many people listen to it. It doesn't matter where it charts. It doesn't, you know, all of that stuff is like, it's nice, but that's not what's gonna make me feel successful. What makes me feel successful is, you know, having this album and being able to listen to it over and over again, which I've been doing since, you know, it's been finished for a while now. I've been listening to it over and over again and still being just as in love with it every single time I listen, and being just as proud of myself as like there's lines in this album that I'm like, how did I write that? You know, like I feel successful with that. So that's how I define success as part of Bob Vylan. Shopify, our web store, Bandcamp, you can get it on Bandcamp. If you get it on Bandcamp, make sure that, you know, even if you're buying the physical, you're downloading it as well. Get the download that comes with it, and so you got that on your desktop or your phone or whatever. Also, if you have a local record store, then go into the record store and get it from there, because it's always good, you know. It's great to get it directly from the artist, and we appreciate that. But, you know, there's nothing wrong with supporting your local record store as well. It's always good to do, and we're big advocates of that, and we're doing some signings and some performances at some record stores around the country on the release week. So feel free to go in store and get it. And if they don't have it, then tell them they're slipping and they're making a mistake, and they need to get it in. So yeah, thank you, appreciate it.
Primordial Radio.